The most dangerous person in the room isn't the biggest, it's the one who could do real damage and chooses not to. It's a strange thought, isn't it, that true safety might depend on how well the scary people stay gentle. You and I live in a world that talks a lot about strength, but not nearly enough about restraint. That thin line between I could and I won't has always been fascinating, to say the least. What happens when different species, different instincts, all that potential for harm get packed into one quiet place and told to hold back? What does trust look like when one mistake could snap bone you don't even have a name for? So stay with me on this for a bit, because this story lives right on that edge of control. Out on a station floating between human space and Kethar territory, there's an academy built not to make warriors, but peacekeepers. And in the center of its calmest hall, under soft lights and careful gravity, a small human named Rowan Pike is about to face a giant who could crush him by accident. Everyone watching believes the systems will keep them safe. They're wrong. But what happens next will change how the entire academy understands power, and why a human's ability to stop matters more than anything they can do. The quiet combat hall felt more like a day spa than a place to train fighters. Soft light floated from hidden panels. The air was clean and cool, just a little sweet, like rain that had never touched dirt. Gravity hummed at a gentle level that suited most of the bodies inside, and the floor shifted in tiny, careful ways under each step. At the center of the room, a human stood in front of a giant. Rowan Pike was not tall for a human. Next to Jahatek of the Kethar, he looked almost fragile. Jahatek's shoulders were wider than Rowan's entire reach. Dense muscles moved under thick, dark skin shaped by a lifetime from a heavy world. They faced each other in silence. Around them, cadets from 6 different species stayed very still. They all watched with careful eyes. No one expected a real fight. This was a calm academy. The rules were clear: control first, power last. Every move was meant to be safe. Still, everyone present knew a simple truth. If something went wrong, the small human in the middle of the bright floor could cause damage far beyond what his plain body suggested. Rowan knew it too. His power did not come from size or raw force. It came from knowing exactly where not to hit, how far not to twist, how much not to use. Years of training had taught him that the most dangerous skill was not striking hard. It was stopping in time. Tonight, the academy would learn how much that mattered. The academy hung in space like a calm thought between 2 minds. It sat in a soft orbit along the quiet border between human space and Kethar territory, with other small empires stretching out beyond. From the outside, the station looked like a ring and a long cylinder, slowly turning to share equal light, equal dark, and equal pull on every side. Inside, it did not feel like a military base. It felt like someone had taken the idea of a training ground and smoothed away every sharp edge. The long halls had rounded corners and quiet colors: soft blue, gentle gold, and deep green seemed to float along the walls. You could not hear clanging weights or shouted orders. Instead, there was the hush of careful breath, padded steps, and the faint breath of systems that watched over everything alive. Many species had built this place together after the last major war faded into old history. The races that now traded across the stars had decided that future peacekeepers needed a new kind of training. No empire wanted conquerors anymore. They wanted guards, mediators, and first responders who could end violence almost before it started and leave as little damage as possible. Gravity was not fixed in the Academy. Each training hall could tune it like a dial. In one room, light gravity races drifted in slow arcs, learning how to move with control when their feet barely touched the ground. In another room, heavy fields pressed down to match the crushing pull of Kethar home soil, letting the giant cadets feel normal and strong. Air was just as careful. Oxygen levels changed from bay to bay. Trace gases shifted to match different lungs. Temperature and humidity bent to the needs of scaled skin, fur, or bare human arms. Every living body had a place where it felt safe. The main combat halls were the heart of the station. Wide, open rooms stretched out under high ceilings. The floors were not simple mats. They were smart surfaces that sensed pressure, speed, and impact. When a foot hit too hard, the floor flexed a little more. When a throw went wrong, new support rose beneath the falling body before bone could crack. The surface could even change its grip to keep a sliding heel from turning into a torn joint. Above and around, invisible arrays watched each move. They tracked angles, time, heart rate, oxygen use, and tiny trembles in muscle fibers. All of that fed into the Academy systems, which constantly adjusted safety levels. The data also fed into teaching. After each class, cadets could view slow-motion records that broke every movement into clear stages. The rule was always the same. Control first, power last. Training started with basic movement, breath, and awareness. No one was allowed to use full strength until their reactions and emotions had settled into a calm, predictable pattern. Instructors cared less about how hard a cadet could hit, and more about how fast that cadet could stop mid-strike without harm. Rowan Pike had arrived at the station with that idea already carved into his habits. He grew up on Earth, in crowded cities where people lived, shoulder to shoulder. From a young age, he trained in martial arts that came from many old cultures. Those styles had survived centuries because they taught more than how to win a fight. They taught how not to start one and how to end it quickly with the least harm possible. When he walked the halls of the Academy for the first time, he felt something settle in his chest. The place matched the way his teachers back home had spoken about real strength. Rowan was light on his feet, with solid but simple features. Dark hair cut short, steady gray eyes, and a posture that said he knew his body very well. His muscles were not huge, but they spoke of long hours of practice, not quick bursts of pride. He carried a calm that looked almost plain, until you watched him move. Most of the other cadets had seen images of humans before they met him. The reputation of Earth had reached far into space. Humans were often seen as impulsive, emotional and oddly fragile. Their bones were light compared to Kethar. Their skin tore easily compared to scaled races. Yet reports from older wars also said humans were strangely hard to stop once they chose a goal. This mix of soft bodies and sharp behavior confused many aliens. Chahatek felt that confusion the first time he stood across from Rowan. Chahatek filled the doorway when he entered the combat hall. Kethar bodies were designed by heavy gravity. Shorter torsos, thick limbs, and bones like packed metal. Dark, almost stone-like skin held in dense heat. When Chahatek walked, the floor knew to increase support. But the big cadet still stepped with care. He had grown up in a culture that respected visible strength and clean, direct force. On his home world, training halls rang with the sound of heavy strikes meeting firm pads. Students learned to meet strength with more strength. To show power clearly, control mattered, but it was measured in how well someone could keep heavy attacks accurate instead of wild. In the Academy's mixed groups, Chahatek often felt like a storm pushed into a snow globe. Every move had to be smaller than his instincts wanted. Every hold had to stop before it felt real. He had never shared a mat with bodies so different from his own. When he watched Rowan in early classes, Chahatek did not know what to think. Rowan moved quietly, never showing off. He did not try to match the Kethar's force. The instructors of the Academy watched this with interest. They knew humans had a special shape in combat history. Evolved on a mid-gravity world full of dangers, humans became fast problem solvers. Their bodies could throw stones, swing tools, and move long distances. Their minds could plan traps and learn patterns. Their social nature forced them to learn restraint, because unchecked violence would tear tribes apart. Now, centuries later, that old mix of danger and care stood inside a calm station between stars, facing a massive Kethar cadet. Instead, he turned his hips just so, placed his feet precisely, and used short, neat motions that seemed too light to matter. But during slow motion review, the truth showed, and a simple step shifted his center of mass in perfect balance. A small turn of his wrist, lined up with the weakest angle in a partner stance, a tiny change in distance took him out of danger by a hand's width without needing a big leap. To many of the larger cadets, this looked like dodging. To Rowan, it was control. Rowan's goal was simple but heavy. He did not just want to pass tests. He wanted other species to see humans as safe partners in close work. Not because humans were weak, but because they chose not to use their full potential, unless there was no other choice. Chahatek's goal was different. He wanted to carry the pride of his people into this joint effort, to show that Kethar's strength could fit inside new rules. He wanted to prove that power could follow careful guidance, not break it. Around them, the Academy's environment kept sending the same message. Light stayed soft, never harsh. Alarms never blared. When mistakes happened, they were caught early by the floors, the air systems, and the quiet but watchful medical bays, tucked just a short walk from every hall. War was no longer part of daily life here. Stories of large fleets and ruined worlds were studied as history, not as plans for the future. The Academy existed to make sure that if conflict ever returned, those who stepped in first would know how to stop it, quickly and gently. Rowan and Jotek did not know it yet, but their time together in this careful place would change the lessons taught here. Their bodies, so different in weight and design, would show classmates and teachers the same central truth. Real power shows most clearly when it holds itself back. Rowan's body looked simple beside many alien forms. No extra arms, no armored plates, no glowing glands along his spine. Just 2 arms, 2 legs, a flexible spine, a head with old mammal features. Still, inside that plain shape, millions of years of Earth history sat like quiet code. Humans did not start as apex hunters. Early ancestors were smaller, weaker, and often hunted by other creatures. To survive, they had to work together, think ahead, and use tools. Over time, their shoulders changed so arms could swing freely. Hands grew strong and precise, able to grip rocks, spears, and later, more delicate tools. Their legs grew long for steady walking and running. The human foot became a strong base that could push off the ground again and again. Not the fastest sprinter, but very hard to shake off over long distances. This gave early humans a strange kind of power. They could keep moving after faster, but less enduring animals had to stop. Inside the skull, the brain expanded. It learned to spot patterns and predict movement. It could imagine how a thrown spear would fly, or how an animal might dodge. It could also imagine what another human might do, or how another human might feel. This social brain brought a new problem. A body built to throw stones, hard enough to break bone, now lived in close contact with friends, family, and neighbors. A hand that could grip a weapon could also hold a child, share food, or build shelter. Uncontrolled aggression inside a small group could be deadly for everyone. So human minds began to grow something else. Self-control. The front parts of the brain help slow down impulses, think through outcomes, and match behavior to group rules. By the 21st century, scientists on Earth had a simple way to say it. Human bodies could deliver sharp violence. Human minds had to learn to say no to that urge again and again. This mix of dangerous ability and constant restraint shaped laws, cultures, and stories. Martial arts grew inside that world. Rowan learned his first stance on a worn mat in a small city gym. The lights were not perfect. The walls had scuff marks, and the air smelled like sweat and old tape. His first teacher was a woman in her 50s, with gray hair pulled tight and hands lined from years of practice. She taught him to bow in respect, to stand with his weight centered, and to breathe before every move. At first, he thought, fighting meant big punches and high kicks. His teacher corrected him gently but firmly. "Your body is sharp," she said during a pause, her hand resting lightly on his shoulder. "Treat it like a tool for careful work. Each move is like delicate surgery. You could harm if you rush. So you train to never rush." Rowan spent years on that mat, and others like it. "Spunded be," and others like it. He learned how joints could be locked with small turns, not brutal force. A slight angle at the elbow could take away strength from the entire arm. A well-timed shift under a partner's center of mass could send that partner to the ground without a slam. He learned about nerves that sat close to bone under thin skin. A precise press there with just the right pressure could cause pain or numbness, enough to stop a fight, but without tearing muscle or shattering bone. Instructors repeated a simple idea. Aim small, use little, finish fast. Leave less damage. These lessons became habits. When Rowan watched someone move, human or alien, he saw lines of balance, open spaces, and danger points. His eyes did not chase muscles. They tracked joints, angles, and timing. When he came to the Interspecies Combat Academy, this way of thinking turned into a kind of secret language in his head. Kethar bodies had thick skin and heavy bones, but their joints still had hinge points. Light gravity species floated with graceful arcs, but their centers of mass still passed through their hips and torsos. Other cadets often looked at Rowan's size and made quick guesses. A tall, glass-skinned alien from a low-gravity world looked down at him and saw a compact, average frame, soft, some thought privately, breakable, likely cautious. A Kethar might see a thin layer of muscle by their standards and decide this human could not do much harm without tools. During early group drills, misunderstandings showed. In a simple pushing exercise, pairs had to move each other back across a line. Many cadets leaned in with raw strength, feet digging into the mat. Rowan did something different. He let the push come, stepped slightly to the side, and turned his partner's weight past balance. The larger body kept moving, but now in the wrong direction, and had to catch itself before falling. To onlookers, it seemed almost like luck. But when the instructors pulled up the slow-motion record later, the truth became clear. Frame by frame, the cameras showed Rowan's heel pivot at the exact moment his partner shifted forward. His hip rotated just enough to clear the force, not more. His hand kept contact, guiding the partner's center of mass over an empty patch of floor. No joint was strained. Beyond a safe range, no muscles locked up. Yet the outcome was complete control of the exchange. The Academy's sensors added numbers. They showed Rowan's reaction time after a visual signal. The delay between sight and movement in his body measured in milliseconds. They also showed sudden spikes in potential force from his hips and shoulders, force that never reached full use because he cut it off in mid-arc. To species that measured strength in display, loud impacts, visible strain, or heavy footfalls, this soft style seemed almost like hiding. It took time before they understood that restraint did not mean lack of danger. It meant danger under active control. In another drill, cadets wore padded shells while practicing strikes to approve target zones. Forms that could break bone in open combat were softened under strict rules, but the Academy still measured impact and path. Shahatek stepped up first, his thick arm slamming into the pad on a Kethar partner's chest. The floor adjusted to the shock. The sensors glowed with high numbers for force and deep penetration. Then came Rowan's turn, paired with a tall, flexible cadet from a low-gravity world. He set his stance, breathed out, and delivered a short, clean strike from hip to fist. No shout, no heavy stomp. The hit landed between ribs, not over the heart, at an angle that would twist rather than crush if used at full power. On the live screen, the impact looked light. The other cadet stepped back, surprised but not hurt. The sensors told a deeper story. The speed at contact was very high. The alignment from ankle through wrist was almost perfect. The calculated bone stress in a non-padded target would have been severe, but Rowan had cut his force halfway before contact, tight muscles absorbing part of the strike. Instructors saved that record for teaching. They showed the class two views, full-speed video and slow-motion breakdown. At normal speed, Rowan looked calm and modest. In slow motion, cadets saw tiny tremors along his arm as he stopped his own power mid-path. The readouts showed how close he had come to a serious strike and how his control kept it safe. Some cadets shifted in place as they watched, glancing at Rowan with new caution. The misunderstanding of humans as weak or overly fragile did not vanish in a day. Old habits and shared stories take time to change, but the Academy had very clear data. Now, human reaction time, nerve conduction speed, and muscle fiber patterns fit a body made for sudden bursts of intense action. At the same time, the parts of the human brain that handled self-control and social harmony were larger than many other species expected. Scans from earlier centuries had shown strong links between those brain regions and cultural training in restraint, law, and cooperation. When instructors combined that science with Rowan's lived performance, they started to present humans in a new light during cross-species theory sessions. They spoke gently but clearly. Human design allows for fast, focused violence, one senior trainer explained during a lecture, while everyone sat on soft benches. But human cultures that survived long-term are those that wrapped that ability in strict rules, honor codes, and arts that trained restraint. Martial arts are part of that story. Rowan sat among his classmates during these talks, feeling both exposed and seen. He did not love being treated as a model of his whole species, yet he understood the need. Out here, trust had to be built on facts, not on old tales from wars or trade disputes. He still remembered a line from his first human teacher back on Earth. The world is safer when dangerous people become kind. Here, many light years from that old gym, the meaning had grown larger. The galaxy could be safer when dangerous species trained to hold back together. The Academy sensors did not track kindness. They tracked numbers. But behind every paused frame of Rowan's strike, behind every slow-motion view of his foot stopping just short of a knee, sat a decision. Use less. 'Cause less harm. Hold the line. Over time, other cadets started to ask him quiet questions after class. How did you stop that punch so fast? Why did you turn your hip that way instead of pushing straight? Could you show me how you fell without hitting your head? Rowan answered with simple words and careful hands. He showed that strength could live inside, small clean motions. He taught them how to see their own bodies as both dangerous and safe, depending on choice. The more they learned, the more a new idea began to take root in the Academy. Humans were not dangerous because they lacked control. They were dangerous because they had so much of it, and because they practiced restraint every day until it felt natural. Later, during the sparring incident with Jatek, this idea would be tested in real pain and real risk. But for now, in the calm light of the training halls, Rowan's steps and strikes were slowly changing how the galaxy saw his kind. The day of the incident began like any other training day. Rowan woke to the soft buzz of his alarm, stretched, and felt the quiet ache of long practice in his shoulders and hips. The station's gravity settled around him with its usual steady pull. It felt a little lighter than Earth, but his body had grown used to it. He dressed in the Academy's simple training gear and stepped into the hall. The air smelled faintly of metal and clean filters, with a hint of something sweet from the hydroponic gardens. Cadets of different shapes and colors moved past, some tall and light-boned, others heavy and wide, others supported by extra limbs or small assist pods. By the time Rowan reached the main combat hall, his mind was calm. This was advanced mixed sparring, a class where different species paired up under close watch. Instructors had been building to this for weeks, testing basics, measuring reactions, and setting safety levels. Today, they were ready for more complex work. Rowan stepped onto the smart floor. The surface adjusted to his weight and posture, reading his balance and muscle tension. Around him, other cadets took their positions. Jatek stood on the far side, rolling his thick shoulders, his dark skin catching the soft light. The big Kethar looked focused, but there was something extra in his stance today. His feet set a little wider, his chest lifted a bit more. Rowan guessed he felt ready to push himself, maybe to show progress and control. The instructors had spoken to Jatek before about holding back. He had done well for someone raised on a heavy world that valued force. Rowan gave him a small nod across the hall. Jatek dipped his head in return. The lead instructor walked to the center, a narrow, sharp-eyed woman from a mid-gravity world. She spoke in calm, even tones that carried through the room. She reminded them of the rules they all knew by now. Target safe zones. Stop when contact would cause harm. Control first. Power last. Pairs formed. As planned, Rowan and Jatek moved toward each other. This would not be a show match. It was a test of cross-species timing and restraint under mild stress. Standing close, Rowan had to tilt his head to meet Jahatek's gaze. The Kethar's eyes, deep and dark, held a mix of respect and challenge. "You are ready?" Jatek asked, his voice a low rumble. "Yes," Rowan said. Light contact. Clear control. Jatek nodded again. Clear control, he echoed, using the shared phrase they had agreed on days ago for safety. They stepped back, took their starting stances, and raised their hands. From the side, the instructor gave a sharp clap that started the match. At first, everything moved the way training was meant to go. Jatek pressed forward with short, heavy steps, his arms guarding his chest and head. He gave testing jabs, slow enough for Rowan to see and avoid. Rowan shifted his feet, staying just outside the path of each strike, turning his shoulders and hips to lessen contact. Rowan reached out with quick tags to safe points on Jatek's arms and side, never hitting hard, just marking openings. The smart floor tracked all of it, adjusting grip and support. Around them, the other pairs moved in their own bubbles, while instructors walked the edges, watching for signs of strain or loss of control. Rowan felt good. He could sense Jatek's progress. The Kethar was holding back real power, cutting his natural force at least by half. His strikes were still heavy, but guided. His breathing was steady. This was what the Academy wanted. Strong bodies learning to live inside gentle limits. Then the mistake happened. It was not sudden anger, not true malice. It was a chain of small things that lined up in a bad way. Jatek stepped in with a mid-level strike aimed at Rowan's padded side. It was meant to be firm, not full strength, a clear test of guard and footwork. At the same moment, another pair to their left stumbled. The floor beneath them adjusted quickly, rising a support pad to catch a falling cadet. That slight change sent a tiny shift across the larger surface. Barely a tremor. Rowan felt it as a half-millimeter slide under his back foot. He adjusted naturally, but that adjustment came a hair later than normal. Jatek's eyes caught the movement wrong. For a split second, his brain read Rowan's shift as a slip, an opening about to widen, reflex from years of training on his heavy world. Kicked in, his inner voice said, "Close the gap, finish the move, catch your partner before they fall into a worse angle." His arm drove forward just a little faster. His stance tightened, adding more force. Rowan saw the change too late. The strike landed harder than planned, a dense mass of Kethar weight slamming into Rowan's right side. Slightly below the ribs, the padded gear absorbed some shock, and the smart floor tried to bend under the impact. But there was too much force in too small an area. Rowan felt and heard a sharp crack inside his chest. A hot line of pain shot around his side like fire. Air fled from his lungs in a broken grunt. For a fraction of a second, his vision narrowed. His knees wanted to fold. His body had a choice to make. Thousands of years of human survival lived in Rowan's nerves and muscles. Pain like this usually meant danger, a predator's attack, a fall from height, or a weapon wound. The simplest response was to shut down, curl away, or strike back with everything available. Rowan's training bent that response into something else. His nervous system fired in a bright burst. Heart rate spiked, stress hormones dumped into his blood. His senses sharpened, sound and sight turning almost too clear. Time felt thicker, stretched. In that stretched moment, he did three things. First, his feet spread and rooted. Not wide and heavy, but just enough to keep him from collapsing in a twisted fall. He let the floor help sinking slightly into its soft response. Second, he turned his torso with the strike. Not against it. This softened the impact on his ribs, likely changing a full break into a crack. It also lined his spine and hips, with Jahatek's center of mass third and most important. He chose his counter. Rowan's arms had already started to move before his conscious mind weighed every detail. Training does that. Instead of twisting deeply into the shoulder, he guided Jahatek's arm up and across, redirecting the line of force past his own ribs. His left palm pressed against a safer spot where thick muscle could take stress. His right hand slid to a point near Jahatek's elbow that had slightly more give. He used Jahatek's own forward movement and gently folded it sideways. To the watching class, it happened in less than a second. Jahatek's strike landed. Rowan grunted and spun. Then somehow the huge Kethar lost his balance, staggered, and dropped to one knee with his arm pinned in a loose but clear hold. No bone snapped. Under stress, practice patterns fire faster than thoughts. His right hand came up under Jahatek's striking arm. His left hand slid toward the thick muscle near the Kethar's shoulder joint. Old habits wanted a full redirection. A human opponent of Rowan's size and mass might have been flipped flat or dropped to a knee with such a move. On a Kethar, that same power, aimed in the wrong way, could strain dense ligaments, tear heavy muscle, or even dislocate a crucial joint. In that instant, years of aim small, use little, finish fast, leave less damage flashed through his mind. Rowan changed the path of his hands by a few centimeters. No joint popped. Jahatek's chest heaved in surprise, not in agony. Then the real pain in Rowan's side caught up with his awareness. A deep, tearing ache burned under his ribs. Every breath felt like glass sliding inside his chest. He held the control point on Jahatek's arm for one more heartbeat, then released, stepping back. "Stop," Rowan managed. His voice tight. Contact injury. Real. The instructor was already moving. She had seen the way Rowan had folded and heard that short, broken sound. With a sharp gesture, she froze all pairs. In place, smart floor locked into a more solid support mode under every cadet to prevent more slips. Jahatek turned toward Rowan, eyes wide. "Aye," he started, but his voice broke. Rowan forced himself to stand straight, or at least as straight as he could. His posture training held like a brace around his spine. He lifted a hand slightly, a sign that he was not in immediate mortal danger. The medical team arrived from the bay next door within moments. A compact doctor with patterned skin and 4 deft hands scanned Rowan's side with a portable unit. Light grazed the surface of his training gear and the flesh beneath. "Cracked ribs," the doctor said in a flat but not unkind tone. "Gravity strain saved you from full break. Smart floor helped too." "Breathing?" she asked. "It hurts," Rowan said honestly. "Air is there. Just sharp." "You did not fall," Jahatek said softly, almost to himself. "That strike should have dropped you." The instructor listened to the doctor's quick orders. She called for a support stretcher, then looked at Jahatek and the rest of the class. "This session is paused," she said. "We will review the footage in detail once Cadet Pike is stable." No one leaves the hall. Until then, there were no protests. Even the boldest cadets stayed quiet. Seeing a classmate hurt in live practice shook everyone, no matter their species. Rowan lay back as the stretcher formed under him. The surface adjusted to his shape, supporting his side while letting him breathe as the med team guided him out. He turned his head enough to meet Shatek's eyes. "You slipped," Rowan said, voice rough. "I pushed too hard," Shatek replied, shame heavy in his thick tone. "We will see," Rowan said. "Let the record speak." The doors to the medical bay hissed closed behind him. Back in the combat hall, the mood had changed. The soft light stayed the same, but there was a tightness in the air. Cadets shifted their weight, replaying their own moves in their heads, wondering where they might have lost control without noticing. The instructor called everyone to sit near the edge of the floor. Shatek sat slightly apart, his large hands resting on his knees, his shoulders rounded in a way that looked wrong on such a strong frame. A clear, large image appeared in the air, showing the moment right before the strike. The view came from multiple angles, each one marked with calm lines and data. Heart rates, muscle loads, angles, and speeds appeared as simple colored bars and numbers. "Watch," the instructor said. "We will go through this slowly." They started at real-time speed. The class saw what they remembered. Shatek stepping in, Rowan shifting. The hard strike, Rowan's sudden turn and counter. Shatek dropping to a knee, Rowan calling stop. The medical team entering. It all passed in less than 3 heartbeats. Then the instructor slowed the playback, every motion stretched out. The tiny tremor in the floor when the nearby support pad rose became visible as a light wave across the surface. Rowan's back foot slid 1/2 centimeter. His calf muscle tensed to catch the slip. At the same time, the graph above Jahatek's body flashed a change. His muscle output in the striking arm jumped. His forward step shortened, shifting more power into the upper body. His eyes narrowed, fixing on what he thought was an opening. "This is the key moment," the instructor said. "Cadet Jahatek, what did you see here?" Shatek swallowed, watching his own face on the screen. I believed Cadet Pike had lost footing. On my world, this is when we commit. We stop an opponent from turning a slip into a dangerous fall. I did not mean harm, but I stopped thinking of limit. I only thought of finish. The instructor nodded. "Your instinct was shaped by heavy gravity training," she said. "But here, with mixed bodies, that reflex becomes a risk. Watch what happens next to Cadet Pike's body." The view zoomed in on Rowan's torso as the strike made contact. The class saw Jahatek's heavy forearm collide with Rowan's side. A force graph spiked, then steadied as the smart floor bent and Rowan's body turned. A small overlay of rib structure showed stress lines through bone. A collective breath moved through the cadets. "Now watch the counter," the instructor said. The video slowed even more, down to a fraction of normal speed. Rowan's face came into view. His eyes widened for a moment at the pain, but they did not shut. Muscles along his jaw clenched. The graph of his heart rate spiked, then leveled. His right foot slid half a step to widen his stance. The line representing his center of mass shifted, but stayed, over the base formed by his feet. His torso turned with the strike, taking the energy around rather than straight through. The overlay of ribs changed from deep red at the first instant to a lesser orange. It was easy to see that this twist had prevented worse injury. Then his arms moved. The class saw Rowan's right hand rise under Jatek's arm, not in a wild flail, but on a clean, direct line. His left hand reached for the Kethar's upper arm, fingers aiming at a familiar grip point. A second window opened in the display, showing a simulation of what would have happened if Rowan had followed through with the full joint lock he had used on human partners in earlier drills. The Kethhar's shoulder joint rotated past safe range, colored lines flashed, marking torn tissue. Pain reading shot high. This is the path his training first chose, the instructor said. Watch what he actually does. The real footage continued. At the last split second, Rowan's hands shifted. Rowan's hands shifted. And present time. His left palm slid 2 centimeters higher onto a bulkier part of Jatek's arm. His right hand changed angle, guiding rather than cranking. He pulled just enough to turn Jatek's forward rush sideways, time stretching as the Kethar's own momentum forced him to pivot. His heavy leg lost its clear base. Gravity did the rest, bringing him to one knee without a sharp twist in any joint. The force graphs around Jatek's shoulder and elbow stayed in the safe zone, peaking but not spiking into red. The room was very quiet. This, the instructor said softly, is dangerous restraint. Cadet Pike was in real pain. His ribs were cracked. His body had full reason to lash out. Instead, his training let him choose the smallest effective action that kept them both as safe as possible. She tapped a control. The footage snapped back to the moment of impact, then played through again from a different angle, this time focusing on Rowan's face and hands. Notice his eyes, the instructor said. He does not shut down. He does not lose focus. He stays with his partner, even while injured. A cadet from a water world raised a hand. Why did the floor and pads not prevent the injury? They asked, voice soft. The instructor did not dodge the question. They reduced it, she said. Without them, we would likely see full rib breaks and possible damage to Cadet Pike's lung. But no system can remove all risk when 2 trained bodies make mistakes at speed. That is why control is not just a rule. It is a shared duty. She turned to Jatek. Cadet Jatek, what did you feel as you began to fall? Jatek's shoulders tensed. He watched his own large form dip toward the floor in the replay. I expected more pain, he said. On my world, such a redirection would cost something. I thought my shoulder would tear. He shook his head slowly. But my arm felt only pressure, no tearing, no break. That was not an accident, the instructor said. That was Cadet Pike choosing to protect you even while hurt by you. Jatek's jaw tightened. He bowed his head slightly. I failed him. he said. I let old training override the new rule. You made a mistake, the instructor said. A serious one. You will face consequences and extra training. But understand this. The purpose of this review is not to punish you in public. It is to show everyone what human restraint can do and why we must adjust our mixed species safety protocols. She addressed the class. Look at the data again. Cadet Pike's potential force here. She marked a point in the video where Rowan's hips and shoulders lined up perfectly for a powerful strike. Could have caused major damage to Cadet Jatek, even through his dense build. He did not use it. He cut his own power in half, then half again. The graph supported her words. Lines that predicted possible impact energy ran much higher than the lines that showed what Rowan actually used. Other species often think humans are fragile. The instructor continued, Today you have seen that their danger is not in constant aggression. It is in how precisely they can choose when not to use what they have. A small cadet with translucent skin raised a hand. So humans are safe because they are careful, they asked. The instructor thought for a moment. Humans can be safe because they are careful, she said. But only if they train that care as deeply as they train their strikes. Cadet Pike is not every human, but his way of moving gives us a model. She let the footage play one more time at normal speed. Now, the class watched with different eyes. They saw not just Jahatek's size and Rowan's smaller frame, but the flow of control under pressure. When the review ended, the instructor dismissed them in groups, giving quiet notes about personal control and reaction habits. Jatek remained seated as others left, his eyes fixed on the now empty display. After a moment, he stood and walked toward the side hall that led to the medical bay. The doors admits him, and he found Rowan propped up on a reclining bed, side wrapped in a compact support brace. Breathing seemed easier now, though each inhale still brought a small flinch around his eyes. Jatek stopped at a respectful distance. I saw the replay, he said. Rowan studied his face. So did I, he replied. They showed it to me here. I endangered you, Jahatek said. My strike was not as we agreed. You reacted to a slip, Rowan said. Your old training pulled hard. That is why we are here, you know, to find where those instincts clash with mixed partners. Jatek's hands clenched and unclenched. You could have broken me, he said. The simulation showed it. You changed your grip. You turned the force. Why? Rowan let out a careful breath. Because breaking you would not fix my ribs, he said. It would only give us 2 injured cadets and less trust in this place. My teachers taught me to end the threat, not punish the body that made the mistake. They will change rules because of this, Jahatek said. Yes, Rowan answered. They should. Jahatek lowered himself to a chair beside the bed. For a moment, neither spoke. Finally, Jahatek said, On my world, strength means you protect others by standing in front of danger. Today you protected me from your own strength. I did not know that kind of power before. Rowan met his gaze. "Now you do," he said quietly. "And now the Academy does too. They will build new lessons from it. Different species. And 4. Different species, different bodies. Same duty to hold back when needed." The medical monitor above Rowan's bed showed his heart rate slowly lowering. Muscles along his side relaxed under the brace. Back in the combat hall, instructors started drafting changes to the safety systems. They added flags for when heavy gravity species reacted to slips. They marked new training blocks focused on cross-species instinct clashes. At the center of those plans, they wrote a name. Not as a hero label, but as a reminder of what had happened. Rowan Pike, the human who showed that the sharpest edge in combat was the choice to pull back instead of cut deeper. The sparring incident hurt. It cracked bone and pride. But in its slow-motion truth, it gave the Academy a clear lesson. Real peacekeepers do not just know how to act under pressure. They know how to stop, even in pain, and place safety above payback. Rowan was not allowed back on the main training floor for 8 full days. The doctors said the ribs needed that time to knit. The brace around his chest held each careful breath in check, too deep, and sharp pain warned him. Too shallow, and the monitor at his side chimed for better air. He hated being still, but he understood why it mattered. Healing was another kind of control. In those days, the Academy moved around him. Instructors and safety officers met in long sessions. They watched the sparring incident again and again from every angle. They pulled up old records of close calls between mixed species and laid them side by side with what had happened between Rowan and Jatek. Patterns began to show. Heavy gravity cadets tended to surge when they saw a partner slip. Low gravity cadets often over-rotated during falls, trusting their lighter frames too much. Humans, with their quick reflexes and joint-focused training, could sometimes place force in small, risky spots without meaning to if they copied a move from home practice. The Academy decided to change. The first change was to the sensors in the floor and the walls. Engineers added new layers to the system. Now, when a heavy gravity body started to surge past a certain speed toward a lighter partner, the floor would soften sooner and shift slightly to bleed off momentum. If a light gravity cadet began to turn into a dangerous fall, micropulses of air would guide their spin toward a safer landing path. The second change was to the teaching plan. They built new training blocks around what the staff began to call cross-instinct control. Instead of only drilling strikes and holds, mixed groups now spent full sessions on how their natural reactions could clash with others. In one drill, Kethar cadets practiced responding to a partner's slip by stepping back instead of forward, pulling power out of a strike instead of adding more. Rowan watched a group of them from a bench on the side one day, his ribs still sore but healing. Jatek stood in the middle of the pair line, his huge form easy to spot. A smaller, four-armed cadet from a light world moved around him, making quick, intentional, fake slips. Each time, Jatek had to read the movement and choose a gentle response. He did not get it right every time. Twice he started to lunge and had to pull back hard, grunting with the effort. But when he finally matched his speed to the lighter body and stopped a hand's width before contact, the instructor gave him a sharp nod of approval. The Academy wrote a new set of rules and checklists, not just for this station, but for every combat training center that worked with more than one species. They called it the Cross-Species Safety Protocols. Inside those rules sat a section nicknamed the Rowan Protocols, though Rowan had not chosen that label himself. These protocols said that any technique used in mixed training had to be studied in slow motion on at least 3 different body types before full-speed practice. They said that cadets had to learn how to map their own instinct habits, then compare them with those of other species in open discussion. They also said that restraint was not just a personal virtue. It was a core skill that would be measured and graded, just like speed, accuracy, and strength. Rowan's name appeared in the notes as an example, not a legend. The text was simple. Human Cadet R. Pike displayed effective restraint under pain, preventing greater injury to a larger partner. Training should model this level of control as a standard goal. When Rowan was finally cleared to move without the full brace, the lead instructor called him into her office. The room was small and clean, with wide windows looking out on the slow spin of stars and station parts. "How is the pain?" she asked. "Dull now," Rowan said. "If I move wrong, it reminds me, but it is not sharp." "Good," she said. "You will return to light drills tomorrow. No contact for a while. But we have another request before that." Rowan raised an eyebrow. "Which is?" She leaned back slightly. "We want you to help teach," she said. "Not as full staff, of course. As a student assistant in the new cross-instinct blocks. You have a way of explaining your choices that other cadets listen to." Rowan thought about the incident, about the slow-motion replay of his own pain, about Jahatek's bowed head. He thought about his first teacher on Earth, and her words about careful hands. "I can do that," he said quietly, "if you think it helps." "We do," she replied, "and Cadet Jatek has volunteered to work with you. He wants to learn and to correct what happened in front of others. That takes courage. I expect you to match it with patience." Rowan gave a small, tired smile.